they're going to weave in and out of each other, and I'm doing it outside here. And so periodically we may have new parts to my story. If I get distracted at some point, it's because some new bug is flying by. So don't be surprised by that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my slides, and just like the last time that you had somebody do that, it's great to know if you can actually see it. So I'm going to ask, because I don't know what you all are seeing. Can you see my screen? Can you see a
Yes.
lovely lake
Yes.
on the shore? Excellent. Thanks, Margaret. So this is Isabel. And not too long ago, maybe about a month ago, we were walking on the shore exploring. This is part of Wolf Ridge property. And she turned to me and she said, you know, because of all this, I'm becoming a better naturalist. And I said, Isabel, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, you know, typically we'd be busy and I'd be teaching and I wouldn't have as much time to just really slow down and notice all the things around me. And because I have so much time, sometimes I just sit places and watch as nature passes on by, and I'm learning so much. And I thought about that. I thought about how crummy this pandemic is for the things that I love to do, which is to be with other people in the woods. And yet she turned it on its head for me for a moment. And this was a great opportunity to pause, to slow down and become a better naturalist, as she decided to say right there. So that's one of the stories that I want to share, a little bit of that. The other is that throughout this past summer, I've been paying attention to all the little things around me. And this is a picture of what seemed like a huge thing just last Wednesday, literally last Wednesday, when I was bird banding at Wolf Ridge with Margie and some others, that this thing flew by me. And I thought I was going to die because it looked like this giant wasp or bee or something. And I'd never seen anything quite so big. And when I zoomed in with my camera better, I realized, oh, it's a normal sized bee carrying something. And so what I wanted to do was to share about how to become a better naturalist through bugs. Okay, and that I'll come back to that story because I have an additional story since last Wednesday that I learned more about what this bee was doing and what it was carrying. But there are really two bugs that were happening with me, right? One is COVID-19. That bug, so to speak, has created a big kerfuffle in all of our lives, right? And at Wolf Ridge, we've had to close. And so for those of you who haven't been to Wolf Ridge, I think that it's worth noting that this is our campus, just part of the 2,000 acres. You can see Lake Superior on the horizon there. And typically at this time of year, this is what we'd be doing: working with students of all ages, exploring the natural world. And my job is to manage the adult portion of that. So the young lady with sunglasses down there looking at these chemicals, my job is to manage and to teach our naturalists, and then they teach the thousands of people that come. Well, March 16th, of course, that was our last day. We closed up and we haven't had groups Wolf Ridge since, and all my graduate students dispersed all over the place. And I've been teaching online since, which is so weird. It's so strange. But we'd be working with all those types of people. And I think that we draw a lot of what we do from Louis Agassiz. So Louis Agassiz, for those of you who might not know, he's the guy who first let's say, discovered the Ice Age. But what I'm more impressed by is his mantra, which is study nature, not books. And I think that's what we do at Wolf Ridge, is that we really focus on studying nature. Books are important, but they complement what we're doing, right? And that the other thing that I really appreciate about Louis Agassiz is in 1873, he started the Anderson School of Natural History. And in 1874, he passed away, and that was the end of the school. But his legacy lives on, because what it was in 1873 and 1874 that was happening at this school is that he would invite teachers to come. And what was interesting, and what I've been reading more and more, is that at that time, to have women educators join in these types of things was odd. And he said, to heck with that noise, this is what we're doing. And he was really focused on that. He wanted to make sure that we were accessible to everybody, environmental education. And so I think that that's what Wolf Ridge does. And my job basically is to invite 16 to 24 graduate students to come and spend a year and learn about about the outdoors as well as teach about the outdoors. And so I think that Louis Agassiz actually has had a big influence on what it is that I do. And this is what I do. I get to work with these graduate students. So I help them to learn a little bit about teaching outdoors, just like Isabel and a variety of other folks. And one way that I help them to actually learn about the outdoors is through nature journaling. And nature journaling is just a really important thing. And what I've realized over the years is that my vision of nature journaling is paper, pencil, writing things down, drawing things. And yet, for me, nature journaling has grown beyond that. It's not just paper and pencil anymore. And I'll explain more about that. This is a long quote, but I think it's worth reading. Actually, part of the screen here is in the way. The overwhelming majority of people who become good naturalists don't gain their knowledge from formal schooling, though that's what I try to do with them. They get it in the field by devoting themselves to direct observation and spending time with other largely self-taught naturalists. So Claire Walker Leslie is a naturalist and an author, wrote that in one of her books about nature journaling. And I have found that to be absolutely true, that people who identify themselves as naturalists, certainly they were in formal schooling at some point, or they take formal schooling, but most of their learning is on their own. Oops. Let's see, there we go. And what we end up learning from each other and through our experience is that it's important to slow down, take notes, share with others, and ask questions. And that all four of those things are sort of the hallmark of becoming a better naturalist. Learning how to slow down, and it's worth repeating these things, take notes, share with others, and ask questions. And during this COVID-19, those four things have become more and more obvious, and I've been practicing them. And that's part of the story that I want to share. And I think it's also interesting at this time when schools are struggling with what to do. Do we open? If we open, what do we do? How are we going to manage this? I think that this from Anne Zwinger, a naturalist and author, Getting to Know Home is the most human and necessary of occupations. To give that power of observations to students is to give them something of infinite value and importance. And think about it, if our students are actually literally at home learning, we could give them that. And we could do that through being a naturalist. James Krupa has said that he's of a dying breed. He's a naturalist. And I don't believe that naturalists are literally dying, but the full awareness of what it means to live out that life of being a naturalist may be dying. And I don't think that this tool, this computer that's between me and you and our learners and what they're learning, I don't think it has to be a barrier. I think that we can get past that. And during this time of COVID, I have learned that it's okay and important to focus on being a naturalist and learn about home, learn about the outdoors. And I think that Margie and I are constantly trying to teach these types of things to everybody who comes to visit Sugarloaf Cove or Wolf Ridge, is that it's important to slow down and do all those other things, right? And naturalists have been around for years and years. Whether they take notes on a rock or on a piece of paper, they're always taking notes of some sort, right? And so it's all about slowing down. You're going to hear me say this several times. Taking notes, sharing with others, and asking questions. Nowadays, I end up taking my notes and sharing with others using iNaturalist, and we brought that up already as one of the programs that Sugarloaf was participating in. And for those of you who may not have as great a knowledge of iNaturalist, it's really just an app that helps you to record your observations, share it with fellow naturalists, and to discuss your findings. That's really all that it is. I'll go into a little bit more detail, but if you're interested in it more, asking questions at the end or talking to Margie, joining some of these classes, you can learn a lot more about it. You'll hear stories. So in amongst all of this, I need to let you know that for the past 5 years, routinely, though not every single night, I go out and I put up a black light behind my garage and turn it on, and in the morning, I go and see what's there. And I have amazing moths that show up. Moths with funny names like the scribbler, moths with amazing patterns and shapes like the American lappet moth. Some that just, you imagine that if they're on a tree, you'd never see them, and yet they're called the colorful zeal. I don't know, that would just totally blend right in. But talk about colorful, some of those patterns and the colors of these moths that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them, and I put them on iNaturalist, and you can see that I've joined this project, and I'm going to show you right down here. You see my name right there, that I've seen 366 species behind my garage. 366 species! Oh my gosh, I never had any idea that there were that many behind my garage, and I know that I haven't recorded all of them. There's a lot more left. This is an iNaturalist page that's focused on Minnesota moths, and anybody who's in sort of a competitive mode, you can see that there are other people who have joined, and I'm trying to catch up with Dexter Ninehouse there, which we know from Hawk Ridge, of course. And I have a daily blog that I put some of these posts on, so you can see I have lots of different pictures of these moths, and I just keep learning every single morning when I go out there and I check my moth light to see what's there. And that's keeping in mind that I'm learning not from opening up books, but from just going out and seeing there. Certainly afterwards, it's about grabbing a book or talking to other people and learning about what it is that I'm seeing, putting some names to these things, but just amazing diversity. Another story that I want to share with you before I really dive into insects is that a few years ago, I decided to hang out at this little patch of goldenrod and just see what was there. And I'll tell you, I think goldenrod is basically the jungle of northern Minnesota. If you go and you hang out by a patch of goldenrod, you'll see bumblebees and bumblebees, different species of bumblebees. You'll start to see wasps of all sorts. Some of them you might not want to get too close to, maybe because you're afraid they're going to chase you away. You'll see moths that look like some of these seemingly dangerous wasps, right? And flies, oh my gosh, you'll see all kinds of different flies. Even some flies that don't look like flies, they look like bees, but they're flies. And some of the flies that look like bees look like the other fly, but they're different. Tiny little nuances on them that make them different species. These are all hoverflies that I'm going through right now. Another hoverfly. Margined calligrapher. I just love the patterns right back here on its abdomen. And you'll see beetles out there as well. And even some beetles that look like the bees and the wasps that you saw before. Everybody's out there. It's just like this giant jungle. Hanging out at a patch of goldenrod has never been the same for me since I realized how much is going on there. It is just absolutely amazing. And this is where I shift into the insects. I think it's important before we really dive into insects to place this all in taxonomy. Now, maybe some people have a good handle on taxonomy. I have to admit that even now I struggle with certain parts of this, like a domain. What was that again? I don't remember, but this is what I do understand, is that insects are in the animal kingdom. They're in the arthropod phylum, and they are a class. There are several orders of the insect class, and what I hope to do is get you a little bit more of a framework so that you can understand what it is that you might be seeing and some of the diversity of the insect life that's out there, whether it's a light that you set up, whether it's a net you run around in the woods and catch things, or if you just stand by a patch of goldenrod and look. That being able to understand some of those orders and divide them helps to really enlighten and make your little jungle safari that much better. So what are we talking about when we're talking about insects? Well, we're not talking about crustaceans, okay? So they have qualities that make them seem insect-like, but this is a crustacean. And crustaceans, like this crayfish, are related to these, the copepods. So crustaceans can be all sizes. And the reason I wanted to show those two pictures is because insects can be all sizes as well, from microscopic to definitely macroscopic, like the crayfish. Well, earthworms aren't insects either. And so there's lots of creepy crawlies out there that aren't in that insect class. Things like slugs and other mollusks, the things like the clams and snails, those aren't insects either. Now, something a little bit closer, but still not an insect, are the spiders. These are arachnids, as are the ticks. Okay, so arachnids, spiders and ticks are related to each other. What we're really focused on right now is insects, and this is a classic insect. What is it that makes it a classic insect? Well, it has an exoskeleton, okay? So it has that hard outer shell. Not all of them are super hard, you know, they don't all crunch like the beetles, but there are this harder outer skeleton. They don't have an internal skeleton. They have three body parts, okay? So they have the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. That's important to recognize to help you to know what it is you're looking at. They have 6 legs. And so you can see one leg here underneath. Whoops, sorry. There you go. Can't push the buttons there. That one, that one. There's 3 on one side, 3 on the other. They have 2 antennae. One there, one there. And depending on how long they are, how feathery they are, that helps to divide them up. They also have 4 wings, though sometimes it's super hard to see. There's 2 wings on this side, one over the other, and there's 2 wings on this side. Sometimes what happens, especially in the flies, you can, if you look at it closely and you know what you're looking at, you can see that there are 4 parts for those wings, but it only looks like they have 2 wings because they also have these front parts that actually are like a gyroscope, and it helps to balance their body while they're flying with their other 2 wings. And the other thing about insects is that they change from one form into another form. And so that was a June bug that we were looking at. Whoop. And they're all different types of species. So here we go. This has a lot of information on it. So I'm just going to show you basically that Insecta has about 1 million, a little more than 1 million described species in it. And scientists suggest that there are 5 or more million species of insects, okay? To put that into real perspective, you can see that plants, which I thought was the king of all organisms. I was going to be a botanist. I think I want to be an entomologist now. Plants, there's only 374,000 species worldwide. The chordates, humans are involved in this. We're one, you know, the mammals and birds and fishes and such, 65,000 species. But 1 million known species and maybe 5 or more million species once somebody gets down to it in insects. So it's a huge, huge group. Most of what's on the planet is also in the group insect. So insect is a class. There are 24 orders of insects. Now, I'm not going to pretend to even cover a half of those. Actually, I'm only going to touch on 10 of them. I'm going to touch on 10 of them, but I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on 5 of them. Okay, so if you want to really focus, this is the time to focus, that there are 5 orders to pay attention to. And if you have a little more brain power, there's 5 other ones I'll show you at the end. These are the 5. I'm going to show you Latin names, but I'll also throw in the common names. Coleoptera, Lepidoptera, Diptera, Hymenoptera, and Hemiptera. So those are the 5. We'll start with the Coleoptera, the beetles, right? And so all of these pictures that you've been seeing, I think a couple of them are not mine, but all the rest of them are mine, and they're just from right around here, around my house, around Wolf Ridge and at Sugarloaf Cove. And so beetles, well, Coleoptera, there are 386,500 species approximately that have been described, and there are more. They are by far the most diverse group of organisms on the planet, the beetles. So many of them. And you've seen them all the time. You think about all the different types of ladybugs. Actually, you count the spots and you realize that there are more than one species of the ladybugs that maybe you thought there was only one species of, right? That they're all different types around us. The weevils, you've seen these. You go walking on the shore around here, weevils are flying all over the place. These green immigrant weevils, they're everywhere. If you just take a moment and pause, whether it's in your garden or really anywhere in the woods, you'll see beetles walking around on plants. Some of them will blend in and some of them will be really tiny. But if you take just a moment and you slow down, you'll notice that there are beetles everywhere, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. Of course, there's the longhorn beetles that come flying by. They still freak me out, right? I mean, I like insects and all, but when one of those is flying by, I go running, screaming, right? Because I don't exactly like these big things landing on me. But then again, I've got these other beetles that I love to catch and hold in my hand, like the fireflies. And and this is where Ogden Nash needs to come in. Maybe you remember this poem by Ogden Nash. The firefly's flame is something for which science has no name. I can think of nothing eerier than flying around with an unidentified glow on a person's posterior. I love all of Ogden Nash poetry. The thing is that science does have a name for that, right? And fireflies aren't beetles, or they aren't flies, they are beetles, right? And that glow is a chemical reaction of luciferase, luciferin, magnesium, ATP, oxygen. Nearly 100% of that energy that is used comes out in light. And the light, you might already know, is used for both romance and defense. And so that glow on their posterior is very important to them. Beetles are also pollinators. You hang out at an oxeye daisy and you'll definitely see some of these types of beetles going by with yellow all over them. That's all that pollen that's on their body. They'll be bumbling from flower to flower. They're not as graceful, these types of beetles, as some of the other pollinators. And now we have a new bug here, right? We've got the moths. Moths are part of Lepidoptera, and there are 157,000 species. And the reason that I identify it all as moths and not butterflies and moths, for those of you who maybe caught me on that, is that for every one species of butterfly, there are 10 species of moth. So it should be called moths, not butterflies. And I'm trying to do them a favor by calling it out and making sure that we recognize that. And we think of butterflies as being the beautiful ones, but there are moths that are just stunning, like this clear wing moth or the hummingbird moths that maybe some of you have seen. Some of the tiny, 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 tiny plume moths, if you take time and slow down and look at some of the flowers in your garden, you'll see these plume moths hanging out there trying to hide. And clearly some moths are really great at hiding, right? Barely see that on the bark. But while some of them are super good at being camouflaged and very hard to see, some of them stand out like a sore thumb. This is one of the many species of lichen moths. This is called a yellow and black. I think it looks orange to me, but I think the species name is yellow and black or black and yellow. I can't remember. Anyway, lichen moth there. This is about a little bit smaller than a dime. Its entire body could fit on a dime. And think about all that detail on that moth right there. What's it all for? I don't know. That's my question. I wonder what's going on with this particular moth and why it needs to have all those fancy colors and different nuances, especially on its tail. What does that do? I don't know. This moth is even smaller than that one. And look at those nuances, those tiny little patterns on there. And being able to notice those patterns and even count some of the dots helps you to identify the moths. They're just gorgeous. Okay, so this is pretty too. I get it. Yeah, monarch butterflies are pretty as well, and that watching them turn into the chrysalis and then be able to pupate into the butterflies that fly around is really great fun. But I want you to know that moths do a lot of the same stuff, right? And so this is one of the caterpillars. This is a spanned hornworm moth. So this is what it looks like as its little inchworm inching along. And this is what it looks like as an adult. It's been great fun to be able to see what I oftentimes can't imagine as being connected. So every single one of these insects, I should have a couple different pictures of them, right? I should have the adult picture as well as all of the young picture. With 1 million species, mind-boggling. Which brings me to the flies. The Diptera. 155,500 species about worldwide. And they're probably the group that has the most research on them. Why? Because they influence humans a lot, like mosquitoes. So a lot of research on how to get rid of some of these flies, right? A lot of research to get rid of deer flies and horse flies. But look at the colors on their eyes. They're stunning. Oh my gosh. I don't like when they bite me, but holy smokes, if you get up close and you can get pictures of them, they're just amazing patterns. The crane flies, well, they don't do any harm to us. They look like they might, and some people refer to them as mosquito hawks, and actually they don't, as adults, even have the mouth parts to be able to eat a mosquito. They look like giant mosquitoes, perhaps, and they look like they could be hawk-sized, but they don't eat mosquitoes at all. The phantom crane flies, if you're off in a wetland or on the edge of a lake and you just pause and you just look just at the right distance, you focus your eyes at the right distance, you'll see these little phantom crane flies flying sideways, their legs not moving, just hovering there, and you can't see their wings moving at all, and you're just like, how in the world is this thing moving around? What's it connected to? And then there's the super giant crane fly. That crane fly, spread your hand out as wide as you can. It's bigger than your hand. It is giant. Tipula metacomet, I think is the name of it. Named after Native American over in the New England states, metacomet. I don't remember anything more about that, but it's fun to dive into some of the Latin names and try to figure out what they're connected to. These are flies as well. These are bee flies. In other words, they go around and they pollinate just like bees would. And they hover around a little bit and even make a little humming sound, sort of like bees do. But they don't sting, which is great. So they're pollinators. This particular one, I took this picture on our canoe when we were paddling around on Windy Lake just a couple weeks ago. And this thing was just hovering around, and I swore I thought it was going to sting us. And then when it landed, I was like, oh, that's a fly. I can tell because I've been learning more and more about what to look for, right? And these are flies. You can see my thumbnail there, that this is a hoverfly. And the hoverflies are those things that will come up to you and just hover right in front of your face and then move off slightly. And if you just hold your hand up there, they'll land on you. They've got no sting to them at all. They're also called flower flies. So the hoverflies will pollinate. Now these are our wasps. We're moving out of the Diptera into the Hymenoptera and the wasps. This particular wasp is called an American pellicinid wasp. It's a solitary wasp, and that long ovipositor is not used to burrow into your heart and kill you with its sting. It's actually used to burrow into the soil, lay its eggs on the June bug, that one of those first little grubs that I showed you, and lay its eggs on there and parasitize it. So wasps are really the highlight of this group, but Hymenoptera includes a lot more than wasps. Let's start with the wasps though. This is called a stump stabber. What a great name. And its ovipositor is 9–10 inches long. His body and wings are as big as your hand. It's just giant. You get the idea why it might be called a stump stabber. It's not going to do anything to you that I know of. Maybe it has a sting to it, but I've never been afraid of it once I've known what it was that I'm looking at. A lot of these solitary wasps will just hang out on the leaves, hovering around looking for caterpillars to get. So parts of those, the Lepidoptera, trying to get those to eat. I was sitting at this very spot last summer, and one wasp kept coming in and bringing these little green caterpillars and putting it into the wicker of this chair that I'm sitting on. And then the caterpillar would fall to the bottom on our deck, and I just watched it bring back, I think it was 12 caterpillars before it stopped. Presumably it was hiding them in some hollow that it was going to then lay its eggs on, but they all dropped to the floor here. The Ophion wasps, I don't know. I don't exactly know anything about them, but they have amazing patterns, and you can see their eyes on there as well. It's fun to take my camera and set it up close to these wasps and just see all the patterns. Now these wasps and hornets, I'm going to stay away from, right? Because certainly some of them will chase you, and that I keep clear of those. I don't have very many close-up pictures of the bald-faced hornets. But I do have some close-up pictures of their relatives, ants. Ants at some point in their life will have wings, and they'll fly off, and shortly after they land, apparently they'll start dropping their wings and walk along and then dig a nest and start a nest. And I understand that some ant species can live to be like 14 years old as a queen. They're fertilized, they're inseminated at one point in their life, and for 14 years they lay eggs, and they run that hive, that mound, until they die, and then the entire mound dies. Wow, amazing. And then there are just bejeweled bees, amazing colors. This green bee on our chicken coop just off to the side here. I was following this particular one. It was going around and exploring, and finally it stopped and I was able to get a picture. And of course, the bumblebees in our garden, great colors to them, and it's just really fun to watch them moving around. And then this too. This is called a sawfly that is related to all of them as well. I watched this and you see all those little things that are sticking out of its backside. It took the longest one, burrowed it into the bark, and presumably started laying eggs there. This is something I need to learn more about as well. I do know that sawflies have something that looks like a caterpillar, but a caterpillar with a large head and no hairs on their body. And so this is actually an elm sawfly grub that was crawling around. They have that amazing blue stripe down their back as well. Now we get to what are called the true bugs. True bugs, the Hemiptera, 103,500. You know, this is where I have to admit my ignorance. I don't exactly remember why they're called true bugs. They just are. I'll buy into that. And the true bugs are things like spittlebugs. You pull away that spit and you see that little thing right there, little spittlebugs, and it's covering itself with that spit to keep it cool during summer, during the hot time periods, as well as to keep predators away. I mean, if you were a predator, would you want to dig through a gob of spit to see if you could find food in there? I think not. And the aphids as well. These are on an alder. You see these furriness on the alders as you go walking through the woods. All these aphids, pretty amazing. The water striders, as you paddle along in boundary waters, you'll see these. These are part of the true bugs as well. And such colors and patterns of these. The shield bug is what this is called. They go through different phases, and so the full adult looks different than this particular one, but I was just blown away by the pattern on this. And then the leaf hoppers, like this. Look at those patterns on that. Now these pictures are super tiny. You can see the hairs on the back of that plant right there, which is a fern. That bug is super tiny. I had no idea the colors that were on that bug until I zoomed in on the picture on my camera. When I was taking it, I just knew it was some sort of bug walking. And now I'm in the pattern of making sure that anytime I see a tiny bug, I take a picture of it so that I can zoom in to see what it is. Some of the true bugs are large. So this is a cicada. This is a Canadian cicada, and they're pretty large. But then some of them, like these stink bugs right here, are the ones that actually will eat other bugs. And so you can see that long mouth part there that is inserted into the pine sawfly grub. That caterpillar looking thing is actually a sawfly. And yeah, wow. Pausing and slowing down and seeing some of these things. I saw the sawflies. I didn't see this particular stink bug here until I was taking pictures and then realized that one of the sawflies was going limp. It was just hanging there. And then I saw something connected to it, sucking its juices out. Woohoo! Okay, those 5 groups, Coleoptera, Lepidoptera, Diptera, Hymenoptera, Hemiptera, approximately 900,000 species worldwide. So remember I said described about 1 million species. So almost all of our insects are in those 5 groups. So if you're only going to learn 5 groups, learn the beetles, the moths, the flies, the wasps, and the true bugs. Get a sense of what those start to look like and just keep your eyes open. That's mostly what you're going to see. Okay, when I say that's mostly what you're going to see, you might not notice some of them while you're seeing them. You know how often we see a thing, but we don't fully notice it? That takes extra effort, right? And so sometimes what's going to happen is you're going to realize that you're noticing other things, and you're not noticing these, even though it's mostly what you're seeing. I think that was confusing language, but you might get what I'm talking about. Here's some of the things that you're probably going to say, well, this is what I'm seeing. Because you're noticing it as well. The Orthoptera, Trichoptera, Neuroptera, Odonata, and the Ephemeroptera. You may recognize some of the names of those. There's only 53,000 species worldwide in all 5 of those groups, so hardly anything. And yet these are the ones that we notice a lot. Like the grasshoppers. So grasshoppers are Orthoptera, 24,000 species worldwide. I found 5 different species on our driveway over here over the past few weeks. So I know that there's a variety out there, though it wasn't until I slowed them down with my camera that I realized that I had 5 species. Until that point, I thought they were all the same, honestly. Okay, so these are the caddisflies, the Trichoptera. Caddisflies, about 14,000 species. They're the ones that as you're paddling along in boundary waters, you see those big sort of webs that are funnel shaped, or maybe if you're digging around in the gravel of a stream, there's some cases of rocks or sticks or something like that. Those are the caddisflies that make that. As adults, they fly around and they look somewhat like that. Okay, so when you see a lacewing, the Neuroptera, you'll know you've seen one because there's nothing else that looks like it. But there's only about 6,000 species. So far of the lacewings, I found about 5 species total in my whole life. And the thing is that I know that there's a lot more around here. I just don't fully know much about them, where to find them. So one of my questions is, where are they? Where should I be looking? Of course, we've all seen these. The dragonflies, the odonates, dragonflies and damselflies, there's only 6,000 species worldwide. And yet those are the colorful, really obvious things. And we think that there's a lot of them. And the thing is that they're just so obvious, so colorful that we can see a lot of those. But again, once you train your eyes into the beetles, there are so many more beetles. Remember, there's 368,000 species worldwide, I think was the number. Something like that. And then finally, the mayflies. Mayflies, the Ephemeroptera, they have that name because as an adult, they live for maybe hours or days. As the young, they live in streams or lakes for possibly a year or more. There's about 3,000 species. And I know, though I've never actually witnessed it, that the bridges around the Twin Cities, sometimes when they have a mayfly hatch, that they'll just be covered. I remember seeing a picture someplace, and maybe some of you have actually lived through it, where they had to use snowplows to plow the bridge of all the bodies of mayflies. Wow, that's crazy. So that brings me sort of back to Louis Agassiz, right? So Louis Agassiz, his mantra was study nature, not books. That's what I've been doing. I've been really focusing on studying nature. And throughout, I've been able to see things, which brings me back to this. So I took this picture, right? And I mentioned this in the very beginning that I took this picture and I knew it was carrying something and I saw that green thing and I saw that as a tube. And so I thought that green thing that was below it was a caterpillar because I'd seen wasps carrying green caterpillars. And so I wondered, what kind of caterpillar is that? Okay, I'll get more to that in a moment. First thing I did was I put it on iNaturalist and I identified it as a leaf cutter, mortar, or resin bee. And I thought, well, I don't know. It could be any of those types of things. When I looked further down on this particular page that you're looking at, I saw on the right-hand side that there were top identifiers of leaf cutter, mortar, and resin bees. John Asher. Okay, so John Asher lives in Singapore, and he is the world expert on bees and wasps of the world. And he spends time on iNaturalist. I have sent him questions before. In this particular time, I decided to send my question to somebody else. So if you go a few below John Asher, you see Heather Holm. I went to Heather Holm and asked her. Why did I ask her? Well, she's an author of a couple books that she talks about up there. And more in particular, she lives in Minnesota. And she's been running different projects about bees and wasps and moths and dragonflies. You can see some of those projects that are listed down there on her profile page. So I contacted her and I said, Heather, what is that green thing that it's carrying? And she said, well, that's a leaf because it's a leaf cutter bee. Oh, of course it is. And so when I looked into a little bit more about the leafcutter bees, I found out that they are our gentle summer pollinators. I went to this particular webpage and read about them and found that leafcutter bees in general have a sting that's about as bad as a mosquito. That's pretty cool, right? To learn about that, and what they'll do is they'll take these leaves, they'll cut them, and they wanted to cut the tenderest leaves. They'll carry them to a hole that they didn't make the hole, but they carry it to a hole. They'll put it in there, lay an egg, go get another one, put it there. That particular female bee was carrying a piece of leaf to a hole someplace in the woods, and I caught her while she was taking a break from flying, carrying that heavy thing. So now I look at that and I don't see a tube anymore. I see an oval shaped leaf that just seems to be curled over a little bit. I didn't know that the first time I saw it. I thought it was a giant bee that was out to kill me, right? But it was all because I slowed down, I took notes with my camera, I shared it with others on iNaturalist, and I asked Heather Holm, what am I looking at? Tell me. And she taught me all about that. So this morning, before meeting with you, I was out walking in our garden, and I saw 2 of these types of bees flying around out there. And I started looking at some of our plants there, and they have perfectly cut circles in their leaves. I know what's going on now. So whether you go out into the woods with a net and your nerdy friends like Kurt Mead and Dave Grosich there, whether you put a black light on the back of your garage and go out and check it each day to see what types of moths came to it, or whether you hang out at a patch of flowers, goldenrod in particular is my favorite, to just look at it, make sure that you slow down, take notes, share it with others, and ask questions. And if we do that, we'll all become better naturalists. And that's what I got for you. Except I have one more tiny little story. Literally just moments before I joined with Margie on this, I had this picture sent to me by one of my naturalists from last year. She sent it to me and she said, Joe, I got this picture. These are called tree cattle. And that's all I know about them. So because she took notes, shared it with me, now I have a question. What are tree cattle? I've never heard of them before, and I don't know that I've ever noticed them before. So thank you so much for letting me babble on there and share my stories.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Anybody out there with questions?
Yes. What kind of camera do you use to get those little things?
Margaret, you would be blown away to know that this little yellow camera that I'm holding here, it's just a little pocket camera. The camera eyepiece is right there. It doesn't move, it stays in there. I can swim underwater with this thing. It has GPS on it. It cost me $350, and I have tricked it into thinking that it's an amazing camera up close. So Margaret, if you ever get one of these, I'll teach you how to trick your camera into taking amazing pictures.
Cool.
You know, this is John Bathke. I actually do have a question. I was thinking about this and wondering, well, what next, or where we go from this? And what I'm wondering is if you're available as a resource, maybe want to do this again with digging deeper into one of the 58 different topics that you covered here today. And and boy, this is up my alley. I just love this stuff. I study this sort of thing every day. I was a biology major in college, and that was just a reflection of my interest. And since then, I've never stopped. And Margie knows this. I'm always asking questions about this stuff. So I was tickled to see your hoverflies. I got all excited about these tiny bees on our plants here, and I asked Margie about it. From my description, she just shook her head. I don't know what that would be, and it took a while, but somebody finally told me what those are and why, which is part of what you were saying. And but I was going to mention too. Frankly, we are inundated with tansy. We fight them all the time, but you know what? The pollinators like them even better than goldenrod.
Really? I have such an aversion to tansy. I think I'm going to change that.
I know.
Jungle.
And I'm the same way. I don't want to see it. But you know what? The little bug critters just love them.
Oh,
and,
man.
Yeah, and that and thistles are the 3 that we have here that they especially like. So before I cut them, I'm out there looking at them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I go walking down the road and our road out here in front, our neighbors like to mow the edges of their road, and we're the only ones who don't, because that's where all the bugs are, and I want to be able to take pictures.
So I started with the question, are you available to do this again some more? Do you want to do that?
Absolutely. So I am working at Wolf Ridge, which is closed essentially, right? I think I have a lot of time.
good. Well, I'm sure through Margie, we know how to reach you, and we'll keep in touch. This
That's
is really good. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, John.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to say thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
Number of years ago, I went on a dragonfly class with Kurt Mead, and really got interested in dragonflies, but have never been all that crazy about other kinds of insects. So I need to slow down and look instead of swatting.
Yeah, and
I need to be observing.
And whether you have a camera like this, or even Margaret, if you have one of those lousy phones that has a camera on it, those cameras are as good as what I'm carrying, but you just have to trick the phone into knowing that it's that good. And I don't know how to work a phone. I don't have one, but I do have one of these, and I know that they can be amazing at taking close-up pictures.
Yeah. So again, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Vienna.
How about a photo class? Teach us
See,
how
that
to
would be really fun, because I wouldn't call myself a photographer in the sense that I really understand how cameras work, but I have tricked this. And there's different tricks. I'll show you one right now, which is that if you're trying to take a picture of a bug that like a hoverfly that's so tiny, this camera, you know, it autofocuses on the thing it thinks you want to identify, right? What I do is I hold my hand the distance I'm going to hold it away from whatever it is I'm taking, and I half click it. And then it focuses on my hand. Okay, so it's got the right lighting, a gray background right there, and the distance. Then when I turn it to the hoverfly and I take a click at it, I have it in perfect focus. But you have to trick the camera into that. Otherwise, the camera thinks you want to take something more grand beyond the beautiful, tiny little hoverfly that it hardly notices.
Wait, cool.
Yeah.
I bring goldenrod in to put in a vase along with, of course, anything else I can find. And I've become very aware of all the bugs on goldenrod. Have them all over our house.
Yep.
Now I've learned to knock them off a little bit before I bring them in.
Good plan.
I just want to pop in here and say we did record this today, so I'm hoping to figure a way we can get it up on our website or through YouTube, and can watch and share. It's a great presentation.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah, that'd be
Thanks.
great.
Thank you,
That'd be great.
Joe.
Thank you.
Molly,
You know-
we could talk offline, but I've got a little experience with the recordings and particularly trying to help Sue with hers on Zoom. So maybe we can gang up on it.
Yep.
Good.
Great.
Great.
And one thing, Molly, that I would offer, if it even seems appropriate, is that I mentioned that I do a daily blog since December 31st, 2015. Every single day I do a blog. It's my little journal, right? But it's my journal that I put on the internet so that my mom could see it whenever she wanted. And so right now I have one viewer on my daily blog. And as much as it is sort of just my like ramblings about the things I'm seeing, all of the pictures that I showed in this are on my blog, as well as a whole bunch more. I typically put about 5 pictures a day on there. And so if it's at all appropriate, I could send you the link to that, because it's just this ongoing like insects of Joe's life.
Sure. That's good. Thanks.
You bet.
So what's your favorite really bizarre lifestyle or life cycle for a bug that you've explored?
Oh, you know, that one where it was sucking the life out of the sawfly. So it was that beautiful bug right there. I truly didn't know that it was there until I had looked. I took a picture of it, and then I zoomed in to look at it to see the sawfly, which, by the way, at the time I thought was a caterpillar from a butterfly or something like that. And I looked at that, and then I saw something connected to it, and I was like, oh my gosh, right? And so just being able to see those types of things. And now I go a lot slower. Like I was out, this was last week, and I was looking at the monarch caterpillars, and I saw one that was just sort of hanging sideways and all droopy, and I was like, I know that there's a stink bug pierced into there, some sort of a shield bug, a true bug that's connected to it, sucking the life out of it right now. And certainly I found it, right? But they're so small. I don't know that I actually answered the question the way you posed it, but that right now is the thing that just floors me, how there's what's that? There's little bugs and the little bugs on top of them, blah, blah, blah. You know, there's that one song. I can't even think of the line that goes in that, but it's about how there are little bugs on top of little bugs on top of little bugs. I love that. I love that whole scale.
Well, and as a practical application of some of that, that's one of the strategies they're trying to use for gypsy moth, to attack the caterpillars with a specific wasp that targets them. Cool. Same idea. Plant an egg in the caterpillar, and then there's others too that are natural around here. Friendly flies do that with forest tent caterpillars and so on. The same idea. It's cool.
Yeah. Oh, just the diversity still, I guess, Margie, everything about bugs just still floors me, because I for how many years have I been priding myself on being a botanist? Now I'm sort of embarrassed to be a botanist. I wish I was an entomologist.
Yeah, well, you know, there's lots of things that you, if you keep asking questions, you're going to get down lots of rabbit holes.
That's true.
You can still do that.
I can still do that.
And I always thought Joe was a lichenologist. That's how
I know. I can't make up my mind.
You're a naturalist. Cover them all.
Molly got it.
Yep.
Okay. What should I do?
Hi. Molly, I think I'm easily distractible.
Hello. Hello.
Hi. Yes.
We're the avoidas, and yesterday we were out in our yard and we saw this long black wasp, and somebody said there was something from another country that's invading or something. I wonder what that was. A murder wasp or something? No, I don't know. What would it be? Could be almost anything, huh?
Well, I think that it was that American pelecinid wasp, because those have been flying around a lot lately. Now I'm going back through my slideshow trying to find that picture really quick so I can show you, and then you can look at it better. There it is. All right, so I'm going to share this screen again. I think I'm going to do that and see if it works. And you're going to look at it and show me, or tell me, is that what it was that you're looking at?
No.
Longer and
better.
I've forgotten the name, but there's a common, fairly common, long-bodied, blue, black, iridescent looking wasp that is what sounds like they're talking about. And I've forgotten the name, but they're, I've seen them here. I think they're solitary.
Ichneumon wasp, is that the same? Ichneumon wasp? It's one of the other long tails.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a grouping of wasps, yeah.
So, Ichneumon wasps. So on my iNaturalist, I use this as my database to be able to find all the things I want to find. I did get a picture of an Ichneumon wasp just a little while ago. Where'd it go? And then I tried to, oh, here it is, the giant black Ichneumon wasp.
That's it.
Yeah?
That's the one that I saw, that I was thinking of.
Could be.
Yeah. And that's native. That's native to here. And that's the giant, it has an appropriate name, right? Giant black and Ichneumon wasp. And the thing that clued me in to that were the yellow legs and the yellow antenna. So as you're watching it fly around, It's intimidating, but if you can see those yellow parts to it, then that should clue you into that particular species.
I don't remember the ovipositor being that big in the ones that I've seen, so I'm wondering if there's another similar species.
And that's the problem with all of these, right? Is there's probably 20 different species that to me all look the same. So yeah, but this was around just recently, and this was one that actually John Asher, that expert in wasps, helped me to identify properly. So I feel confident that I got this one right. Does that mean it's the only one or not? Who knows? Not me.
Would they actually sting you?
No, these are used for laying eggs, and that I don't even believe that they necessarily have the capacity to sting us. No. And John, you're shaking your head no. You know more about it. Tell us.
Well, no, not specifically, but there's a whole lot of bees and wasps that don't sting at all, and and there's a lot of them that bite like crazy. There's eat meat and so on. So there's a lot of variety that way, but these, when you have a long ovipositor, there's no way for a stinger to be there that sort of takes the place of it in a sense, and so that's in the way.
But it's intimidating as all get out.
Yeah. Looks like a sword.
It does. Oh my gosh. Excellent. Well, again, I appreciate the time.
Looks like you got a question, Joe.
Oh, is there another question?
Yeah, somebody put a question about, does anyone know where the Anderson School photo was taken?
Oh, so an island near Boston, one of those islands out there, Pekingese Island or something like that. So Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute is essentially what took place after the Anderson School closed down. Then it ended up burning down. I know that much. And so those buildings don't exist anymore. And yet the essence of it is what opened up at Woods Hole.
Else?
This was a great talk. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, it makes me wanna sponsor a program that's come catch as many insects as we possibly can and look at them. Just look at them.
Right. Yeah, and Margie, I think about the Mycological Society and how they send all those people out there, and then you come back and there's tablefuls of mushrooms. I wouldn't want to enter the room with tablefuls of bugs crawling all over the place, but I would love to see the variety.
Yeah, well, and yeah, just to think that there's 4 million or more insects that are out there. I mean, yeah. The biomass is just mind-boggling.
Okay.
We got a picture here. We got a picture.
This is the black wasp. My husband just went out and got a picture of it.
Get out.
Oh, wow.
How do we make it bigger? How do we, can you do, so I'm putting it on speaker view. Oh, that's amazing.
That's different. That's not what I was thinking.
Yeah,
that doesn't have that big ovipositor.
No.
It's in the narrow-waisted wasp group.
Yeah.
And yet that's the extent. I got to stop right there. I don't know any more about it.
I think I might have heard what it was one time, but I certainly don't remember today.
Post it on iNaturalist. Yeah, post it on iNaturalist and see what happens.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool. That's really fun.
Very fun. All right, well, looks like we need to turn you all loose to go hunt for bugs.
And Margie, you had mentioned ice cream in the beginning, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
All right. And ice cream.
And ice cream. Go find your ice cream. And hey, if you don't eat all your ice cream, you can set it out on the counter and I'm sure you'll have some takers of the insect variety. There's always more than one way to do this.
That's right. Well, I hope to see all of you again. I hope to see you all again.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.